Hello, dear members of the Soul Stories family. Today we will bring you a romantic, funny love story, so let's get started. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any meaningful stories. Part 1. A Fateful Encounter. The Conquest Begins. Manhattan, New York, a Friday afternoon filled with the blaring sound of car horns and the bustling pace of a city that never sleeps. Skyscrapers tower high, the fading sunlight obscured by their shadows, and the weekend atmosphere brims with excitement. Inside Mount Sinai Hospital, one of the most prestigious medical facilities in the area, the ambiance stands in stark contrast. Cold, quiet, with only the steady beep-beep of heart monitors echoing from the examination rooms, like a familiar background tune of life itself. Here, Dr. Michael Mike Carter, 32 years old, the top cardiologist in the department, sits in his small office, a tranquil corner amid the storm of work. His piercing, ice-blue eyes scan the patient chart in his hand, each line read with absolute focus. He wears dark blue scrubs, his brown hair slightly tousled after a grueling 12-hour shift, yet his sharp-featured face retains an impeccable professionalism, as if fatigue could never touch him. Mike is nicknamed the heartbreak surgeon by his colleagues, not because he breaks hearts in the romantic sense, but because of his exceptional talent in repairing damaged hearts medically, paired with a cold demeanor that keeps emotions out of his work. To him, the operating room is a battlefield, and he is a general who never loses. He's known for his strict life principle: no wasting time, especially on patients who fake illnesses to stall or seek attention. If your heart isn't genuinely in trouble, "Don't step into my office," he once told a new nurse, his deep voice cutting like a knife. For Mike, every minute is as precious as the beat of a living heart, and he has no patience for pointless games. A few rows of seats away in the waiting area, Annie Brooks, 26 years old, sits with her legs crossed on a gray plastic chair, her hands scrolling through her phone with an excited expression. Her golden blonde hair falls naturally tousled under the fluorescent lights, a few strands dropping over one eye, though she doesn't bother to brush them back. Annie is a freelance fashion designer, beautiful in a classic American way, a radiant smile like sunshine, mischievous eyes always hiding some wild idea, and a touch of craziness she proudly calls her lifestyle. She isn't here for a checkup, but to visit her best friend Sarah, who just broke her leg during a yoga class in Brooklyn and is recovering on the third floor. Annie promised to bring some cheer to Sarah by live streaming the hospital life on Instagram, even though she knows Sarah will just yell at her to stop. Annie has just stood in line to grab a latte from the small coffee stand in the hospital lobby, holding her phone high to film the busy nurses and waiting patients. "Look at this, Sarah. What a stressful hospital. Everyone's so serious," she says loudly through the live stream, her clear voice making a few nearby people turn their heads. She takes a sip of the latte, so hot it makes her wince, then suddenly turns her head. And that's the moment everything changes. Mike steps out of the emergency room, holding a patient chart, his stride brisk yet confident. He stops in front of a middle-aged man clutching his chest in pain, his deep, icy voice ringing out, "Sir, your heart's fine. Stop clutching your chest. It's not a movie set. Go home." The man mumbles an apology and shuffles off, embarrassed, while Annie stands there, her hand gripping the scalding latte, her heart pounding like she's just run a marathon. She stares at him unblinkingly, from the scrubs hugging his broad shoulders, to his piercing eyes cold as the Arctic, to his confident gait as if he owns the world. "Oh my God," she whispers to herself, her voice trembling with excitement. "That's the hottest doctor I've ever seen." Then she shouts into the live stream, "Sarah, forget your broken leg. I just found the soulmate of my life." Sarah yells back from the other end, "Annie, shut up, everyone can hear you." But Annie doesn't care. She laughs loudly, her eyes sparkling as if she's just stumbled upon treasure. From that moment, Annie knows she has to act. Not with a typical Tinder date or a boring coffee meetup. She wants a debut worth remembering, one that will etch her name into the mind of this cold doctor. "He's my biggest challenge," as she tells herself, clutching the latte tightly as if gearing up for battle. And so the plan to fake an illness to win the doctor officially begins, with all the boldness and craziness only Annie Brooks would dare to unleash. The next day, Annie returns to Mount Sinai Hospital, determined to make Mike the first victim of her conquest campaign. She wears an oversized gray sweater that nearly covers her hands, paired with ripped jeans. A look comfortable enough for her act, yet cute enough to make an impression. That morning in her Brooklyn apartment, she stood in front of the mirror for an hour practicing her pained expression, clutching her chest, wincing, breathing heavily. Everything had to be perfect, like a Hollywood actress. "I've got to get his attention," she tells herself, taking a deep breath before stepping into Mike's office. She pushes the door open and collapses onto the patient chair with a carefully rehearsed look of agony, clutching her chest and gasping, "Doc, I swear my heart's been skipping beats since I saw you." Mike looks up from his computer screen, his blue eyes scanning her like an X-ray, emotionless, unmoved. He says nothing, simply stands up quietly, grabs his stethoscope, and places it on her chest. After a few silent seconds, he pulls it away, his voice flat as a robot. "Your heart's fine, better than mine after a double shift. Go home." Annie blinks, trying to salvage it with a charming smile and a tilt of her head. But I feel it fluttering. Could it be love at first sight?" Mike raises an eyebrow, types something into her file on the computer with lightning speed, then pushes his chair back and stands. "Next patient." A nurse steps in, politely ushering Annie out, leaving her standing dazed at the door. "Round 1 failed," she mutters, but an idea sparks in her mind. "It's not over, Doc. I'm just getting started." The next day, Annie returns with a new script, faking a faint. She picks rush hour after work, when the hospital lobby is packed, to maximize the drama. She walks in, staggers through the crowd, a few shaky steps, a perfect stumble, then collapses onto the floor right in front of the reception desk, clutching her head and crying out, "Oh no, I'm fading." People gather around, some shouting for a nurse, and a young nurse rushes over with a first aid kit, flustered. Annie lies there, eyes half closed, waiting for the moment Mike appears like in a movie. But Mike, passing by after checking a patient, merely glances at her and sighs, a sigh of exasperation she can feel even while pretending to faint. He bends down, checks her wrist pulse for exactly 3 seconds, then stands up, telling the nurse in a cold tone, "She's fine. Probably just needs a coffee. Get her out of here." Annie cracks one eye open, muttering, "Seriously? This guy's tougher than a New York cabbie." The nurse helps her sit up, and a few onlookers chuckle as she's led to the door, her face flushing with embarrassment. Undeterred on the 3rd day, and Annie ups the ante. She walks into Mike's office, this time faking amnesia, an idea she got from watching a medical drama at midnight. She sits down, gazing at him with a bewildered look, her hands clasped like a lost girl. "Wait, where am I? Are you my fiancé?" Mike stops typing, turns to her with eyes that could pierce concrete, sharp, unwavering. "No, I'm your doctor, and you're my headache." "What's your game this time?" he asks, his voice flat but tinged with irritation. Annie grins widely, shrugging casually. "Just checking if you'd play along, Doc." Mike shakes his head, opens her file on the computer, and adds a note. Annie leans to peek, but only catches, "Drama queen, do not treat," before he points to the door. "Out." She stands, feigning disappointment. "You're breaking my heart, Doc." But as she leaves, she whispers to herself, "He's good. I like this challenge." On the 4th day, Annie goes bigger. She appears in the hospital lobby with her grandest act yet, faking a severe heart attack. She'd planned it meticulously, choosing the noon rush when the lobby's packed for maximum impact. She walks in, clutching her chest, stumbling a few steps, then rolls onto the floor amid the crowd, shouting, "Call 911! I'm dying!" Panic erupts. Some yell for a nurse, one rushes over with a stretcher, and others pull out phones to record. Exactly as Annie hoped. She lies there performing like a Hollywood star, chest clutched, eyes shut tight, waiting for Mike's reaction. He's upstairs in a meeting but comes down the stairs at the sound of the commotion, his face sour. From a distance, he stands with hands in his blouse pockets, watching her performance without a hint of surprise. He steps closer, his voice low and chilling. "Get up." Annie cracks an eye open, weakly. But my heart, Mike cuts her off. Your heart's fine. Your acting's not. You're banned from my clinic. He turns and walks away, leaving Annie on the floor, red-faced amid the crowd's laughter. A kind nurse helps her up, whispering, "Honey, he's tough as nails. Give up." Annie forces a smile. "Not yet. I'm not done." By the fifth day, Annie decides to go all in. She knows she can't get into Mike's office anymore. He's officially barred her with a note at reception. "No Anna Brooks allowed," signed in his firm handwriting like a death sentence. But Annie isn't the type to give up. She stands outside Mount Sinai Hospital on Madison Avenue, holding a megaphone borrowed from a familiar Uber Eats delivery guy after an hour of begging. She takes a deep breath, switches it on, and shouts, "Doctor! Michael Carter! My heart beats for you. Give me a chance." The megaphone's sound echoes across the area, drowning out car horns and pedestrians. Patients peek out windows, nurses at reception burst into laughter, and passers-by stop to film, cheering. "Keep going, girl." A newsboy nearby yells, "Marry her, Doc." Up in his fifth-floor office, Mike is signing paperwork when he hears the shout through the megaphone. He leaps up, pulls the blinds aside, and looks down in disbelief. Annie stands there, hair blowing in the afternoon breeze, holding the megaphone like a proud warrior, her smile radiant despite the curious stares. For the first time, a crack appears in Mike's icy facade. His cheeks flush, not from anger but embarrassment, a feeling he's never known in his career. "This girl's really crazy," he mutters, but the corner of his mouth twitches upward, a rare smile he doesn't even notice. Dr. Jenny, his colleague beside him, laughs loudly. "Mike, she just made you a TikTok star. Accept your fate, buddy." Annie doesn't stop there. She keeps shouting through the megaphone, "I'll come back, Doc. You can't fix my heart, but you can steal it." The crowd claps and cheers, some yelling, "Say yes, doctor." Mike slams the blinds shut, flops back into his chair, and rubs his temples as if warding off a raging headache. He tells himself he has to end this nonsense, but deep down, he can't deny it. This girl is different, funny, bold, and something that makes his heart, the heart of the heartbreak surgeon, skip a beat, though he refuses to admit it. He mutters, "What am I getting myself into?" Meanwhile, Annie leaves the hospital gate, her heart buzzing with excitement. She knows she's caused a scene, but she doesn't care. Step 1, make him notice me. Check, she tells herself, skipping toward the subway station, the megaphone swinging in her hand like a trophy. She doesn't know that, up above, Mike is pulling the blinds open again, watching her small figure disappear into the sea of traffic. He shakes his head, but this time, he doesn't add anything to her drama queen file. Instead, he leaves the paper on his desk, whispering to himself, what's she going to pull next? A question he doesn't yet realize will soon have an answer. Part 2, developing the situation, building the relationship. After her megaphone love declaration in front of Mount Sinai Hospital, Annie Brooks knows she's left a mark on Dr. Mike Carter's mind. Not the romantic kind she dreamed of, but at least enough to make him unable to ignore her. However, faking illnesses clearly isn't working anymore. Mike has posted a "No Anna Brooks Allowed" note at the reception desk, and Annie hears from her best friend Sarah that he even told security, if she's not actually bleeding, don't let her in. Sitting in her small Brooklyn apartment, Annie sips a cold latte, her eyes lighting up as she devises a new plan. If I can't get into the hospital, I'll invade his life directly, she tells herself, a mischievous smile spreading across her face. She opens her laptop, pulls up Google Maps, and starts hunting for information about where Mike lives. Through a few connections in the fashion design world, Annie discovers that Mike resides in an upscale apartment building in the Upper East Side, a luxurious Manhattan neighborhood with cobblestone streets, lush green trees, and buildings blending classic and modern architecture. Renting an apartment there is far beyond her budget, but luckily, Mike's landlady, Mrs. Rosie, an elderly woman who loves dogs and sweets, happens to be a huge fan of the homemade donuts Annie often makes to unwind. Annie shows up at Mrs. Rosie's door with a box of sugar-dusted donuts and a fabricated story. I just got a job nearby and need a convenient place to live. Can you help me out? After a few minutes of chatting and a strawberry jam-filled donut, Mrs. Rosie nods. All right, young lady, the apartment next to Dr. Carter just opened up. But don't make too much noise. He's a tough one. Annie smiles to herself. I'll try, ma'am. On moving day, Annie deliberately makes a racket to catch attention. She drags her suitcase, hauls bags, and lets her pug, Muffin, a fluffy ball of fur with big round eyes, run loose in the hallway. Muffin bolts straight to Mike's door, barking loudly like an alarm. Mike, just back from a long shift, opens the door with a tired expression, only to see Annie fumbling to pull Muffin back. Oops, sorry, Doc. New neighbor here, she says with a wide grin, waving as if they're old friends. Mike looks at her, then at the dog, his voice icy. You've got to be kidding me. He slams the door shut, but Annie isn't discouraged. She whispers to Muffin, Good boy, phase 1 complete. From then on, Annie launches her daily disruption campaign. Monday morning at 6 a.m., while Mike is catching up on sleep after a night shift, she knocks on his door, wearing an oversized hoodie, her hair tied messily, holding an empty mug. Morning, Doc. Got any coffee? My machine's busted. Mike, eyes blinking rapidly from lack of sleep, opens the door looking like he could kill. There's a Starbucks 2 blocks away, he replies, his voice hoarse. Annie shrugs. But yours is closer. Neighbors help neighbors, right? Mike sighs, turns back inside, grabs a packet of instant coffee, tosses it out the door, and slams it shut before she can say more. Annie holds the packet, laughing. He's warming up to me, Muffin. The next day, Annie pretends her water's out. She knocks on Mike's door, holding a small wrench. Her face panicked. Doc, my sink's dead. You're a doctor. You fix stuff, right? Mike opens the door, still in his hospital scrubs, staring at her with an expression that says, I can't believe I'm living next to this person. I fix hearts, not pipes, he says. But Annie pushes past him into her apartment, dragging him to her sink, which isn't actually broken. She'd unscrewed the valve earlier as an excuse. Mike reluctantly bends down to check it, fixes it in 5 minutes, then stands up, brushing his hands. Next time, call a plumber, and stop calling me Doc. Annie beams. Thanks, Mike. You're my hero. He glares at her and walks off, but inwardly wonders why he didn't kick her out right away. The peak comes one Friday night when Annie lets Muffin invade Mike's place. She intentionally leaves her door open, and Muffin dashes into his apartment, leaps onto the couch, and chews on Mike's favorite running shoes, a pair of Nike Air Zooms he'd saved 3 months to buy. Mike comes home, sees the chaos, and yells, Are you serious? Annie rushes over, feigning panic. Oh no, Muffin, bad boy, though her eyes sparkle with glee. Mike holds up the ruined shoes, staring at her. You owe me a new pair. Annie shrugs. How about I owe you dinner instead? Pizza on me? Mike starts to refuse, but then just sighs, tossing the shoes in the trash. Keep that dog away from me. Annie smiles inwardly. He didn't say no to pizza. Progress. Gradually, Mike shifts from annoyed to reluctantly accepting Annie's presence. One rainy night, he hears soft sobbing from the balcony. Annie is out there, hugging a pillow, her shoulders trembling. Mike stands inside, peering through the glass, muttering, Not my problem, but then grabs a cold can of Coke and steps out. He taps the glass, hands her the Coke. You out of tricks yet? Annie looks up, eyes red, not faking this time, but upset after a phone argument with a difficult client that ruined a big order. She takes the Coke, smiling faintly. Not yet, Mike. Thanks. Mike shakes his head in exasperation, but for the first time, he lingers a few minutes, watching the rain with her in silence. Annie glances at him, her heart racing. He's not as cold as he pretends. A few weeks later, Mount Sinai Hospital hosts its annual fundraising gala at the Marriott Hotel in Midtown Manhattan, a glamorous event with chandeliers, live music, and expensive tuxedos. Mike, who hates social gatherings, is pressured by colleagues to attend. Worse, Dr. Jenny, his close friend in the department, warns him, The director's eyeing you for her daughter Lisa. She'll cling to you all night if you don't have a shield. Bring a girlfriend. Mike grimaces. I don't do girlfriends. Jenny laughs. Then fake it, genius. You're a surgeon. Improvise. That night on his way home, Mike spots Annie delivering a gown to a client near the Marriott. She's in a denim jacket, carrying a dress box, whistling cheerfully on the sidewalk. He pulls over, lowers the window and calls, "Hey, Brooks." Annie turns surprised. "Wow, Mike, you know my last name?" He sighs. "Hard not to, with all your stunts. I need a favor." He briefly explains the gala and the Lisa problem. Annie's eyes light up and she shouts, "Jackpot, I'm in." Mike mutters, "I'm going to regret this," but agrees. At the gala, Annie arrives in a fitted black dress, her hair in soft waves, red heels accentuating her long legs. Mike, in a black tuxedo, waits in the lobby, slightly thrown off for the first time when he sees her. "You clean up nice," he says, his voice still cool. Annie winks. "You too, Doc." Ready to fool the world? They enter arm in arm, and Annie instantly transforms into the perfect girlfriend. She smiles charmingly, spinning funny made-up tales about how she met Mike at a coffee shop. "He spilled coffee on my shirt, then took me to dinner to apologize," making his colleagues roar with laughter. Lisa, the director's daughter, watches from afar with jealous eyes but doesn't dare approach with Annie so confidently by Mike's side. Everything goes smoothly until Annie overdoes the margaritas. After 3 drinks, she snatches the mic from the MC, stumbles onto the stage, and wraps her arms around Mike in front of hundreds of guests, shouting, "Listen up, everyone. This guy's my future husband. Hands off, ladies." The crowd freezes for a second, then erupts in laughter and applause. Mike stands frozen, face flushed, gripping his drink tightly. He whispers, "You're insane." But Annie just laughs. "And you love it," Jenny yells from a nearby table. "Get a room, you two." While the hospital director chuckles, "Well, Mike, didn't know you had it in you." Mike pulls Annie off the stage, his face darkening. "What the hell was that?" Still drunk, Annie slings an arm around him. "Relax, Mike. I just saved you from Lisa. You're welcome." He wants to be mad, but her goofy, drunken smile softens him despite himself. He sighs, calling Jenny over. "Get her out of here before she burns the place down." Jenny laughs, patting his shoulder. "Oh, I've got a better idea. You both need a timeout." Before Mike can protest, Jenny hails a taxi, shoves them into the back seat, and yells to the driver, "Take them to the Marriott. I booked a room." Annie giggles, resting her head on Mike's shoulder. "Best date ever." Mike, his head spinning from the drinks and chaos, mutters, "I'm done," then closes his eyes, letting the taxi take them away. Part 3. Peak of Hilarity. The Mystery of the Ring. The early morning sunlight slips through the thick curtains of a luxurious Marriott hotel room in Midtown Manhattan, shining directly onto the grimace of Dr. Michael Mike Carter. He opens his eyes, his head pounding like a hammer, his mouth dry as dust after a night he can only vaguely recall as full of margaritas, laughter, and some kind of chaos. Mike sits up, reaching for the water bottle on the bedside table, but then freezes as if turned to ice. Beside him on the king-size bed covered in pristine white sheets, Annie Brooks lies fast asleep, her blonde hair splayed out like a bird's nest, one arm resting on a pillow, the other wearing a plastic wedding ring glinting in the light. Mike blinks, thinking he's seeing things, but then looks down at his own left hand. A matching ring, cheap and shiny, sits boldly on his ring finger. "What the hell?" he shouts, his hoarse voice echoing through the quiet room. The yell jolts Annie awake. She yawns widely, rubbing her eyes with the sleeve of her crumpled gala dress from the night before, then sits up groggily. "Geez, Mike, lower the volume, will you? I'm dying here." But when she sees him, face pale, eyes wide, hand trembling as he points at the ring on her finger, she panics too. "Wait, what's that?" she yells, holding up her hand to stare at the glowing plastic ring. They lock eyes, silent for 3 seconds like a movie scene, then shout in unison, "What did we do last night?" The hotel room instantly turns into a small battlefield. Mike leaps out of bed, pointing at Annie. "You! This is your fault. You got me drunk and tricked me into some insane marriage trap." Annie, still on the bed, clutches the blanket to cover herself, firing back. "Me? I don't even know how we got here. You didn't stop me, Mr. Heartbreak Surgeon." Mike fumbles through the pockets of his vest scattered on the floor. searching for his phone, but pulls out only a wad of crumpled paper, a few coins, and a broken ballpoint pen. "I don't remember a damn thing after Jenny shoved us into that cab," he roars, rubbing his temples. Annie shrugs, still half asleep. "Well, I don't remember saying I do, so we're even. Maybe you proposed, huh?" Mike glares at her. "Not funny, Brooks." They dive into piecing together their memories, but their minds are a thick fog. Mike vaguely recalls the gala fundraiser at the Marriott, the lively music from the live band, and Annie dragging him into a dance that looked like a mix of cha-cha-cha and amateur hip-hop. Annie remembers drinking margaritas, a lot of margaritas, and shouting something into the mic, followed by Jenny appearing with a sly grin and pushing them into a taxi. "Oh God," Mike groans, collapsing onto the room sofa. "You yelled I was your future husband." Then Jenny said something about a timeout. That's it. Annie cackles, though her head aches just as much. Classic me. But that doesn't explain these rings. Did we rob a pawn shop or what? Mike resolves to uncover the truth before he loses his mind. He rummages through the hotel room, a lavish suite with a white leather sofa, a mini bar stocked with liquor, and a large window overlooking the majestic Empire State Building in the morning light. But he finds no marriage license, no witnesses, nothing except a pile of wrinkled clothes and Annie's red high heels rolling around on the floor. Meanwhile, Annie staggers to her feet, slipping back into her black gala dress from the night before, muttering, "If we're married, I deserve a better honeymoon than this hangover. Where's the champagne?" Mike shoots her a look. "Not funny. We need to figure this out before I have a heart attack, and I'm the one who fixes those." They check their phones for clues. Mike's inbox is flooded with messages from the hospital staff group chat, a slew of texts from Jenny sent at midnight. "Mike, you and Annie were hilarious last night. That dance move, though, where'd you learn that? TikTok material. Check your vest pocket, lover boy. You've got a souvenir." Annie opens TikTok, and sure enough, a video from the gala is trending with over 50,000 views. Her clinging to Mike's neck on stage, shouting, "This guy's my future husband. Hands off, ladies." While Mike stands like a statue, face red with embarrassment. The clip ends with Jenny pushing them into a cab, laughing and waving. "Have fun, newlyweds." Annie bursts out laughing. "Okay, so Jenny ditched us here. She's evil, but still no wedding clue." Mike snatches the phone from her, muttering, "This is a nightmare. I'm never drinking again." They call Jenny, the only one who might know what happened. She picks up after 2 rings, her laughter nonstop. "Oh, you two lovebirds finally awake? How's the newlywed life treating you?" Mike yells into the speaker, "Jenny, what the hell happened? Why are we wearing rings?" Jenny stops laughing, surprised. "Wait, you don't remember? Oh, this is pure gold. Check your vest pocket, Mike. You've got the evidence right there." Annie cuts in, "Yeah, and tell us why we're in a hotel." Jenny laughs harder. "Patience, bride. Just look in the pocket." Mike digs into his vest pocket again, more carefully this time. He pulls out a folded, crumpled sheet of paper that faintly smells of tequila. He unfolds it, reading aloud in a shaky voice. "Certificate of marriage. Congratulations, Michael Carter and Anna Brooks. Issued by Fake Vegas Wedding Booth, Mount Sinai Gala Fundraiser." Below are their scrawled signatures and red-inked fingerprints. Mike smudged across the edge. Annie peeks over his shoulder, collapsing onto the sofa in a fit of laughter. "Oh my God, it's fake! We didn't get married for real. I knew I wouldn't forget my own wedding." The truth slowly unravels through Jenny's story over the phone in hazy flashbacks in their minds. After her husband proclamation on stage, Annie, in a margarita-fueled haze, dragged Mike to a photo booth in a corner of the gala, where the hospital had set up a fake Vegas wedding game to raise funds. The booth was decked out with a neon Vegas-style sign, a staff member in a fake Elvis outfit officiating, and a cheap certificate printer. The idea was for couples to marry for fun, sign a paper, wear plastic rings, and take a keepsake photo, each turn donating $50 to the hospital's charity fund. "You two were so wasted," Jenny recounts, still chuckling. "Annie insisted you'd be her groom. She even tipped an extra $20 for fancier rings, the kind that glow in the dark." Mike starts recalling the scene. though his memory feels like a chopped-up film reel. Annie pulled him into the booth, a nearly empty margarita in hand, shouting, "Come on, Mike, let's make it official." He, already tipsy from 3 drinks his colleagues forced on him at the gala, smirked. "Fine, but I'm not paying for this circus." They signed the paper, left fingerprints in red ink from the faulty printer, Annie smearing some onto Mike's hand, laughing. "Now you're marked." The booth staff handed them 2 glowing plastic rings, and Annie slipped one onto Mike's finger, yelling, "Now you're stuck with me." Mike, drunk, put one on her and said, "Yeah, until I sober up tomorrow." Afterward, they danced some more at the gala, pulling off goofy moves that had the crowd cheering, until Jenny, thinking this fake couple was too adorable, booked a hotel room via an app and shoved them into a cab with a parting, "Enjoy your wedding night, you crazy kids." Mike and Annie, too drunk to register anything, just giggled stupidly and passed out the moment they hit the bed, still wearing the plastic rings like trophies. Back in the present, Mike holds the fake certificate in his hand, slumping onto the sofa, clutching his chest as if escaping a nightmare. "You made me think I was hitched for real. I was about to call a lawyer and cancel my life." Annie, sitting across from him, doubles over laughing until tears stream down her face. "Well, if you were, it'd be to me. Lucky you." She raises her hand, letting the plastic ring glow faintly in the room's dim light, then winks. "Admit it, Mike. I'd be a fun wife. Imagine the chaos." Mike shakes his head, but the corner of his mouth curls into a rare smile. The first time he can't hide his amusement. "You're a walking disaster," he says, tossing the paper aside like shedding a burden. But as he looks at Annie, hair a mess, dress wrinkled, still beaming as if nothing happened, he feels something odd in his chest. Not fear or annoyance, but a gentle, warm sensation. Maybe even a hint of curiosity about this strange girl. He stands, brushing his hands. "Get dressed, Brooks. We're leaving this circus." Annie claps her hands, jumping up. "Okay, husband for a night. How about breakfast?" "My treat, since I almost gave you a heart attack." Mike sighs, but this time he doesn't refuse. "Fine, but no more stunts, you hear me?" Annie shrugs, grinning mischievously. "No promises, Mike." They leave the hotel, stepping out onto the bustling midtown streets, leaving behind the funniest wedding night either has ever experienced. A memory Annie secretly thinks could be a turning point, though it also makes her start to wonder, am I going too far? Are you still following the stories from Soul Stories? Share your thoughts and feelings about today's story in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more meaningful and heartfelt stories from Soul Stories. Part 4. Annie decides to leave, distance and emptiness. After the chaotic, fake wedding night at the Marriott Hotel, Annie Brooks steps out of Midtown Manhattan with a smile on her face, but an indescribable feeling wells up in her chest. She had achieved her initial goal, making Dr. Mike Carter, the cold heartbreak surgeon, unable to ignore her. But as they stop at a small diner for breakfast, amid jokes about the plastic ring and Annie's laughter, she realizes something. Mike isn't reacting the way she'd hoped. He doesn't get angry or snap at her, but there's no sign he sees her as anything more than a comedic disaster. When Annie teases, "So, husband for a night, what's next for us?" Mike only smirks, replying curtly, "Next is you stop breaking into my life." He says it in a joking tone, but his icy gaze makes Annie pause. She laughs loudly to cover it up, but in her mind, she starts to wonder, am I just a joke to him? On the ride back to the Upper East Side, sitting in a taxi amid Manhattan's bustling traffic, Annie stares out the window, fidgeting with the glowing plastic ring. She'd done it all, faked illnesses, pestered him, even turned him into a TikTok star. But Mike still keeps his distance, like an unmelting wall of ice. As the taxi pulls up to their apartment building, Annie turns to him, saying softly, "Hey Mike, I'll stop bugging you now, okay? You're free." She smiles, but this time it lacks her usual radiance. Mike raises an eyebrow, looks at her for a second, then nods. "Good. I could use some peace." He steps out of the cab, leaving Annie sitting there, her heart heavy. That night, Annie lies on her bed in the small apartment next to Mike's, staring at the blank white ceiling, twirling the plastic ring like a keepsake. Muffin, her pug, curls up beside her, snoring softly. She turns on her phone, scrolling through emails, and an old message from a week ago pops up. A job offer from a major fashion company in Los Angeles. An opportunity she'd once declined because she didn't want to leave New York, where she'd built her life and dreams. But now she rereads it with a different feeling. Maybe it's time, she mutters. Maybe I've been chasing something that doesn't even exist. Annie doesn't sleep all night. She thinks about the times she knocked on Mike's door, the silly pranks with Muffin, and the drunken engagement at the gala. She'd thought her persistence would move him, but after everything, she only feels like a fool. A ridiculous girl trying to barge into the life of someone who never opens up. He doesn't need me, she tells herself, tears rolling down her cheeks. And I don't need to keep humiliating myself. By dawn, Annie sits up, opens her laptop, and replies to the email. I'm in. I'll move to LA next week. She has exactly 1 week to pack up. On the first day, Annie calls Sarah, her college best friend, to break the news. LA, are you serious? Sarah yells over the phone, her voice full of shock. What about your hot doctor? Annie laughs weakly. He's not my anything, Sarah. I'm done playing the fool. Sarah tries to convince her to stay, but Annie is firm. I need a fresh start. New York's too loud for me now. At the end of the call, she asks Sarah to take Muffin. I can't bring him on the plane yet. You'll love him, I promise. Sarah agrees, but her tone is sad. I'll miss you, crazy girl. On the second day, Annie starts selling her stuff. She posts ads on Craigslist, parting with her old sofa, a scratched-up desk, and even the coffee maker, the one she'd used as an excuse to bother Mike. A young couple comes to buy the sofa, chatting cheerfully as they haul it out of the apartment. Annie watches, feeling empty inside. She packs her clothes, fabrics, and design sketches into suitcases, leaving the apartment increasingly bare. Mrs. Rosie, the landlady, stops by when she notices the moving, asking worriedly, Where are you going, Annie? I like your laughter around here. Annie forces a smile. L.A., ma'am. New job. I'll mail you some donuts. Mrs. Rosie hugs her, whispering, That doctor boy will be sad, you know. Annie shakes her head. He won't even notice. On the third day, Annie officially gives up the apartment. She signs the lease termination with Mrs. Rosie, hands over the keys, and stands in the hallway, looking at Mike's door one last time. She wants to knock to say goodbye, but then stops herself. No more stunts, she tells herself, turning away. She takes Muffin to Sarah's place in Brooklyn, hugging the little dog for a long while before handing him over. Be good, okay? I'll come get you when I settle down, she says, her eyes red. Sarah hugs her. You sure about this? Annie nods. Yeah, it's time. For the remaining 4 days, Annie stays at Sarah's, wrapping up her final tasks, delivering her last design orders, packing personal belongings, and buying a plane ticket to LA, a flight departing at 8 p.m. Saturday from JFK. She doesn't tell Mike anything. No texts, no hints. She wants to vanish quietly, like a breeze passing through his life. But every night, lying on Sarah's sofa, she can't stop thinking about him. His cold eyes, his rare smile, the can of Coke he handed her in the rain. Maybe he'll be happier without me, she tells herself, but her heart aches. While Annie silently withdraws from his life, Mike initially feels relieved. The first day without a 6 a.m. knock, he sleeps better than usual, undisturbed by Annie's chirpy voice asking for coffee. The second day, he comes home without Muffin barking or chewing his shoes, and he thinks, finally, some peace. But by the third day, the silence starts to bother him. He stands in the kitchen, eyeing the instant coffee packet on the shelf, the one he'd tossed to Annie, and wonders why he kept it there. He opens the balcony door, glancing instinctively toward Annie's place, but sees no sign of her, no lights, nothing but emptiness. Weird, he mutters, closing the door. On the fourth day, Mike begins to feel restless. He comes home from work, walks down the hall, and notices there's no sound of lively footsteps or Annie's whistling from next door. He stops at her door, spotting a fresh "for rent" sign, his heart sinking. She's gone? He asks himself, but then brushes it off. Probably on some crazy trip. She'll be back. He goes inside, turns on the TV, but can't focus. He paces, then grabs a Coke from the fridge, something he never drank before meeting Annie. He stares at the can, muttering, "What's wrong with me?" By the fifth day, Mike can't take it anymore. He goes to work in a foul mood, snapping at nurses over petty things, something he'd never done before. Jenny, noticing the change, pulls him aside in the doctor's lounge. "Okay, spill it. What's up with you?" Mike shrugs. "Nothing. Just tired." Jenny raises an eyebrow. "Bullshit. You've been a grumpy cat all week. This about Annie?" Mike tenses but doesn't answer. Jenny laughs. "Oh man, you miss her, don't you? The chaos, the dog, the coffee runs." Mike starts to deny it but then sighs, slumping into a chair. "She's gone quiet. No knocks, no barking. It's weird." Jenny looks at him, her eyes playful. "She's not just quiet, Mike. She's leaving. Tomorrow. L.A. Didn't she tell you?" Mike freezes as if punched in the chest. "What?" he asks, his voice hoarse. Jenny nods. "Yeah, got a job offer. She's flying out from JFK, 8 p.m. tomorrow. I thought you knew." Mike shakes his head, his hand crushing the Coke can until it dents. "She didn't say anything." Jenny pats his shoulder. "You're an idiot, you know that. She's been throwing herself at you for weeks and you just sat there like a brick wall. Now she's gone, and you're moping? Do something, Mike." He looks at her, silent, but his mind is a mess. He remembers Annie's laugh, the way she shouted his name through a megaphone, the time she fake cried on the balcony, and he stood there, unsure why he didn't walk away. "I don't want her to leave," he whispers, admitting it to himself for the first time. That night, Mike doesn't sleep. He sits in his dark living room, holding the plastic ring from the gala, something he'd kept for reasons he couldn't explain. He watches it glow faintly in the darkness, and for the first time, the heartbreak surgeon feels his heart beating out of control. He stands, opens the balcony door, and looks at Annie's empty apartment again. Still nothing. "She's really leaving," he mutters. He shuts the door, grips the ring tightly, and decides, "I can't let her go." Part 5. Airport Climax, Chasing Love. Saturday, Annie's final day in New York, begins with a gray sky and a light drizzle. The kind of weather she once loved in this city, but now it only weighs her heart down further. She spends the morning in Sarah's temporary Brooklyn apartment, checking her luggage one last time. A black rolling suitcase packed with clothes, design sketches, and a few keepsakes from New York, including the glowing plastic ring from the gala, which she couldn't bring herself to throw away, despite her decision to leave Mike behind. Annie glances at the clock. 5 p.m. Her flight to Los Angeles departs at 8 p.m. from JFK. Sarah hugs her one last time before she gets into the taxi. "Call me when you land, okay? And don't cry over that dumb doctor." Annie forces a smile. "I won't. Promise." But as the taxi rolls through Brooklyn's familiar streets, she can't stop herself from looking back one last time, secretly hoping for something she knows won't happen. She arrives at JFK at 6:45 p.m., stepping out of the taxi and pulling her suitcase through the bustling lanes of Terminal 4. The airport is awash in bright lights, with the steady hum of announcements over the loudspeaker. Flight 237 to Los Angeles, Gate C12. Boarding begins at 7:15. People rush by dragging suitcases, children cry, and the smell of Starbucks coffee from a nearby stand mingles in the air. Annie puts on her earbuds, playing her favorite playlist. Frank Sinatra's New York, New York comes on. A cruel farewell. She wears an old denim jacket, her hair tied high, trying to maintain a calm exterior, but her brown eyes dart around constantly, as if searching for a familiar figure amid the sea of strangers. She drags her suitcase to the check-in counter, handing her ticket and passport to the agent. "Just one piece of luggage, right, Ms. Brooks?" the agent asks in a monotone voice. Annie nods. "Yeah, just this." She checks the wall clock. 7:05. 55 minutes until takeoff. A tiny spark of hope flickers inside her. What if he shows up? What if he actually cares? But then she mocks herself, muttering, "He doesn't care. He's probably glad I'm gone." She takes her boarding pass from the agent, pulls her suitcase toward security, but every hurried footstep or distant call of a name makes her turn back, her heart pounding. Annie pauses at a small Starbucks near the security checkpoint, buying a latte. The last thing she wants to remember about New York. She leans against the wall, watching the flow of people. A family with a suitcase covered in stickers, a businessman shouting into his phone, a few couples hugging goodbye. She sips the latte, burning her tongue, but it's not enough to chase away the chill in her chest. This is it, she tells herself, her eyes welling up. Goodbye, Mike. She turns off her earbuds, pulls her suitcase toward security, determined not to look back, but her heart refuses to obey. While Annie stands at the airport, Mike is at Mount Sinai Hospital, finishing his last shift of the day. After his talk with Jenny the day before, he hasn't been able to stop thinking about Annie, about the strange emptiness of the past week, the plastic ring he's kept in his blouse pocket, and Jenny's words, "Do something, Mike." He stands in the break room, twirling the ring, his mind a tangled mess. He'd thought about calling Annie a dozen times but didn't know what to say. "Hey, don't leave. I miss your chaos." He, a doctor always in control, feels powerless over his own emotions for the first time. The wall clock shows 6:30 p.m. Jenny walks in, sees him still standing there and sighs, "You're still here? Her flight's at 8, JFK. You're running out of time, idiot." Mike looks at her, then at the ring, and suddenly jumps up. "I'm going." Jenny laughs. "That's my boy. Go get her, Romeo." Mike bolts out of the room, not bothering to change out of his white scrubs, just grabbing a jacket as he races to the garage. He hops into his black SUV, slams the gas, and speeds onto the road, his heart racing. I can't lose her. But New York isn't on his side. Rush hour traffic turns everything into a nightmare. He's stuck on the Brooklyn Bridge, cars inching along amid blaring horns and a worsening rain. "Not now," he yells inside the car, slamming the steering wheel. The dashboard clock flips to 7:15. He looks out at the endless line of cars and realizes he won't make it unless he acts. Mike flings the door open, abandons the car on the bridge, shoves the plastic ring into his pocket, and runs. His white blouse flaps in the wind, hair matted by rain as he dashes through the crowd on the sidewalk, panting. Passers-by stare at him like he's crazy, but he doesn't care. "Annie," he mutters, "wait for me." He reaches JFK at 7:40, sprinting into Terminal 4, soaked to the bone, his sneakers slipping on the floor. He scans the departure board. Flight 237 to Los Angeles, Gate C12, boarding. He weaves through the crowd, bumping into someone with a suitcase and shouting, "Sorry," before pressing on. He doesn't know where Gate C12 is, but he spots a line at security, and a gut feeling tells him Annie's there. He's gasping, his heart pounding like it might burst, hand clutching the ring in his pocket. "I'm not too late. I can't be." At Terminal 4's security checkpoint, Annie is among the last in line. She pulls her suitcase, hands her boarding pass and passport to the TSA agent, her eyes scanning one final time. The clock reads 7:50, 10 minutes until the gate closes. The agent finishes, nodding. "Okay, you're good to go. Have a safe flight." Annie gives a faint smile, pulls her suitcase toward the scanner. She takes off her shoes, places her bag on the conveyor, and steps into the machine. But her heart feels like lead. "He's not coming," she tells herself, eyes stinging. She steps out, retrieves her things, and prepares to enter the restricted area, but then pauses, looking back one last time. Nothing but the sound of announcements and a distant crowd. She takes a deep breath, pulls her suitcase toward Gate C12, but after a few steps, a shout rings out behind her. "Annie!" That voice, deep, hoarse, but so familiar it stops her heart. Annie turns, eyes wide, and there he is, Mike, standing dozens of feet away beyond the security barrier, hair disheveled, wet blouse clinging to him, hand raised as if to hold her back. He's panting, shouting again, "Annie, don't go!" The crowd around security turns to look, some whispering. "What's happening?" Annie stands rooted, her suitcase slipping from her hand, heart hammering like it might break free. Mike rushes closer to the barrier, gripping the metal bars, staring at her through the glass. "Don't go. You're the one condition I can't fix." He pulls the plastic ring from his pocket, holds it up, his voice trembling. "I'm an idiot. I should have said this sooner. Stay with me. Annie bursts into tears, streams running down her cheeks. She runs back, darting through the area she just cleared, ignoring the security guard's call. Ma'am, you can't go back. She doesn't care, racing to the barrier and throwing her arms around Mike through the cold metal bars. You're here, she chokes out, clutching his shirt. Mike awkwardly strokes her hair, whispering, Yeah, I'm here. Worst timing ever, huh? Annie laughs through her tears. Worst timing ever, Doc. You almost let me leave. A security guard approaches sternly. Sir, ma'am, you can't do this here. She's already cleared security. Mike turns, still holding Annie through the bars. Give us a minute, please. I'm begging you. He looks at Annie, his eyes softening in a rare way. I was stupid. I didn't realize how much I needed you until you were gone. Stay, Annie. New York's not the same without your chaos. Annie laughs, crying and nodding. Okay, you big idiot, but you owe me a latte for this. The guard sighs, shaking his head. Fine, but make it quick. And she needs to recheck her luggage. Annie lets go of Mike, wiping her tears. Wait for me outside, okay? Mike nods, still gripping the ring. I'm not going anywhere. Annie runs back to grab her suitcase, glancing at him once more, her radiant smile returning to her face. Part 6. Sweet Reunion. A year has passed since that dramatic moment at JFK Airport, and New York seems to have changed. It's no longer just a city of blaring horns and relentless pace, but now a place that holds the sweet memories of Dr. Michael Mike Carter and Anna Annie Brooks. After that fateful night, Annie didn't board the flight to Los Angeles. She dragged her suitcase out of Terminal 4, hand in hand with Mike, and they stood under Manhattan's light drizzle, laughing like two kids who just skipped school. You owe me more than a latte for this, Doc, Annie teased, and Mike, for the first time shedding his cold demeanor, replied, How about a lifetime supply? That marked the start of a new chapter. No more fake illnesses, no more plastic rings, but a real love, clumsy yet sincere. 1 year later, life together in the Upper East Side. Now Mike and Annie live together in a larger apartment in the Upper East Side. Not the tiny unit next to Mike's that Annie once rented, but a new place with big windows overlooking tree-lined streets and a balcony wide enough for both to sip coffee each morning. Annie has brought Muffin, the fluffy pug, back from Sarah's, and he's now an official family member, often sprawled on the sofa or chewing toys scattered around the house. The apartment bears the marks of both of them. Annie's design sketches hang on the walls, a corner of Mike's desk holds medical books, and a fancy coffee machine sits proudly, an insistence of Annie's. No more instant coffee, Mike. We're civilized now. One autumn evening, Annie stands in the kitchen, wearing an oversized hoodie and shorts, stirring a pot of pumpkin soup, a recipe she learned from TikTok to impress Mike. He walks in from the living room, still in his green scrubs after a shift, hair slightly tousled but a rare smile clear on his face. Smells good, he says, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Annie turns, winking. Better than your hospital cafeteria, right? Mike chuckles softly. Anything's better than that. Annie raises the ladle, teasing, Careful, Doc, or I'll make you eat instant ramen for a week. They sit down to dinner at a small table by the window, the warm yellow glow of streetlights filtering through the curtains. Annie looks at Mike, suddenly bursting into laughter. You know, a year ago, I thought you'd never let me stay. No fake rings this time, right? Mike stops eating, gazes at her for a second, then stands and walks to a drawer in the living room. He returns holding a small velvet box, opening it in front of her. Inside is a real ring, simple silver but sparkling under the light. This time I'm sober and sure, he says, his voice deep but full of emotion. Marry me, Annie. For real. Annie freezes, hand covering her mouth, eyes glistening. Oh my God, Mike! She shrieks, leaping from her chair and hugging him so hard the soup bowl spills onto the table. Yes, 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 but you're still terrible at timing. Mike laughs, a free, easy laugh he'd never had before, and slips the ring onto her finger. Annie holds up her hand to admire it, then teases. Better than the glow-in-the-dark one, I'll give you that. They embrace amid the messy kitchen, their laughter ringing out, blending with Muffin's soft snores from the sofa. A few weeks later, a walk in Central Park. A few weeks later, on a late autumn afternoon, Mike and Annie take Muffin for a walk in Central Park, a place Annie always calls New York's Green Heart. The park's trees are ablaze with gold and red, leaves drifting down beneath their feet. Annie wears a long knit coat, holding Muffin's leash, while Mike, in a rare break from scrubs, sports a leather jacket and jeans, looking more relaxed than ever. Muffin bounds around, chasing a flying leaf, making Annie laugh. He's happier than both of us combined. They stop near Bow Bridge, where the fiery sunset reflects on the calm lake water. Annie rests her head on Mike's shoulder, her hand laced with his, the silver ring gleaming in the fading daylight. "You know," she says softly, "I almost left this city, almost left you." Mike turns, looking deep into her eyes. "I almost let you go." "Worst mistake I never made." Annie smiles. "Yeah, you're lucky I'm persistent. And loud." Mike smirks. "Too loud, but I wouldn't have it any other way." They stand there watching the sunset fade, birdsong mixing with the gentle breeze through the trees. Annie suddenly tugs Muffin's leash, shouting, "Race you to the fountain," and dashes ahead, laughing loudly. Mike shakes his head but runs after her, his laughter joining hers, echoing down the park's narrow path. When they reach the Bethesda fountain, breathless, Annie throws her arms around Mike, pulling him into a long kiss under the sunset. Muffin barks a few times as if cheering, then flops onto the grass, lazily watching his parents. As the kiss ends, Annie rests her head on Mike's chest, whispering, "No more running, right?" Mike tightens his grip on her hand, his voice warm and low. "No more running. You're stuck with me now, Brooks." Annie laughs. "Good, because I'd hate to chase you through JFK again." They stand there, holding each other in Central Park, the sunset casting a golden glow over the scene, closing the story of a cold doctor and a crazy girl who found each other amid the sweetest chaos. Thank you for following this heartfelt story of Soul Stories channel. Share your thoughts about the story in the comments below. If you believe that true love can withstand all trials and sometimes begins in the simplest of ways, don't forget to hit the like button and share this story with your friends. To never miss out on touching and meaningful stories, subscribe to our channel and help us spread messages of love and warmth to everyone. Let's cherish the beautiful moments of life and love together. Hey, hello dear members of the Soul Stories family. Today we will bring you a romantic, funny love story, so let's get started. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any meaningful stories. Part 1. A Fateful Encounter. Late at night in San Francisco, thick fog shrouded the Golden Gate Bridge like a mysterious veil. The orange lights flickered along both sides of the railings, casting a hazy glow onto the wet pavement after the afternoon rain. The stillness of the air was suddenly torn apart by the roar of an engine, a sharp, defiant sound echoing between the massive steel beams of the iconic bridge. Avery Carter, 28 years old, sped through the darkness on her blazing red Ducati, its wheels gliding effortlessly over the slick road. The wind blew fiercely, whipping her long, curly brown hair free beneath her glossy black helmet, revealing tangled strands that flickered like small flames in the shadows. She leaned into the bike, hugging the handlebars tightly, her eyes sparkling behind her goggles. A mischievous grin spread across her lips as she pressed the Bluetooth earpiece inside her helmet. "See, Jen," she shouted, her voice overpowering the wind and the engine's roar. "I told you I could do it. No cop's gonna catch me." On the other end, Jen's high-pitched laughter crackled through the tiny speaker. "You're crazy, Soph, but I haven't seen proof yet. Don't get caught, 'cause I don't want to lose this bet." Avery burst into loud laughter, her voice blending with the screech of the tires on the road. "Lose? Dream on! This bridge is my playground." Avery Carter wasn't an ordinary girl. At 28, she was the sole heir to Carter Enterprises, a massive real estate conglomerate worth billions of dollars, built from the ground up by her father, Henry Carter, a cold and ambitious tycoon. From a young age, Avery had been destined to take over that empire, but she despised the idea of being confined to stuffy boardrooms, forced into stiff suits, and subjected to the prying eyes of the board of directors. To her, life was a series of challenges to conquer, and she always sought ways to escape the heavy shadow of her family through wild, reckless antics. Racing, skydiving, betting with friends. That was her world. Tonight she'd bet Jen, her best friend since high school, that she could ride across the Golden Gate Bridge at top speed without getting caught by the police. The prize? A trip to Hawaii, courtesy of Jen. If she lost, she'd have to wash Jen's beat-up Mustang for a whole year. Avery had no intention of losing. She pushed the throttle harder, the speedometer needle jumping to 120 miles per hour. The wind howled past her ears, icy and biting, but this feeling of freedom was what she craved. The Golden Gate Bridge stretched out before her, a challenging path shrouded in dense fog. Halfway there, she muttered, quickly at the rearview mirror. Nothing but darkness and faint lights, easy as pie. But just as the words left her mouth, a blinding flash erupted behind her. Two stark white headlights pierced through the fog, accompanied by the piercing wail of a police siren. Avery frowned, checking the mirror again. A black and white patrol car was tailing her, closer than she'd expected. "Pull over immediately, or I'll arrest you," a stern, icy voice blared through the patrol car's loudspeaker. Avery froze for a split second, her heart pounding faster, but then she laughed loudly, drowning out the siren. "Arrest me. Let's see you try." She cranked the throttle to the max, the Ducati roaring like a wild beast, surging forward at breakneck speed. The bridge's curves loomed ahead, but she didn't slow down. Her grip on the handlebars was steady, her legs clamped tight around the bike, as if she and the Ducati were one. "Jen, you hear that?" she yelled into the earpiece. "There's a cop, but I'm not stopping." Jen shouted back, "You're insane, Soph. Pull over, it's not worth it." But to Avery, stopping meant defeat, and she never accepted defeat. The patrol car didn't give up. It stuck to her like glue, its headlights flashing relentlessly, the siren screaming a warning she couldn't ignore. Avery glanced at the mirror, realizing her pursuer wasn't an amateur. The police car maneuvered skillfully through the narrow lanes, closing the gap more than she'd anticipated. "Who's this stubborn jerk?" she muttered, her breath quickening. She leaned into a sharp curve, the tires skidding slightly on the wet pavement, but she regained control in an instant. Ahead, the bridge began to narrow, and she knew she couldn't keep running forever. But give up? Never. Suddenly, the patrol car accelerated, overtaking her and cutting her off with a daring swerve. Avery flinched, slamming on the brakes hard, the tires screeching against the pavement, leaving a thin trail of white smoke. The Ducati halted just a few meters from the police car, its engine still growling, as if refusing to surrender. The patrol car's door swung open, and a tall figure stepped out under the glare of the headlights. Polished black boots gleamed on the wet road, and that cold voice rang out again, no longer through the speaker, but directly confronting her. "Get off the bike, now." Avery removed her helmet, revealing a beautiful face brimming with defiance. She tossed her hair back, flashing a mischievous grin at the man before her, a police officer with sharp features, piercing eyes, and an uncompromising demeanor. "Hey, Mr. Serious," she said, her tone teasing. "Got too much free time tonight, huh?" But his gaze didn't waver. "Papers," he replied, his voice hard as steel. "You just broke the law, and I'm not here to play games with you." The Golden Gate Bridge remained cloaked in thick fog, the orange lights along the railings flickering like hazy eyes in the dead of night. The roar of the red Ducati's engine had faded, leaving only a faint hum as Avery Carter was forced to stop in front of the black and white patrol car, blocking her path. Smoke from the tires lingered in the air, mingling with the dampness of the recent rain. The patrol car's door opened, and a tall figure emerged, his polished black boots glinting under the headlights. Logan Hayes, 32 years old, appeared in a crisp police uniform, broad-shouldered and standing straight like a steel statue. His eyes were sharp, flashing a cold, unrelenting stare, as if he were born to confront people like Avery. Logan had grown up in a poor working-class neighborhood in Oakland, where his father worked as a mechanic and his mother sewed to make ends meet. His life had been peaceful until he was 18, when his younger brother, Tommy, 4 years his junior, was killed on the street by a wealthy drunk driver. The man escaped justice thanks to money and expensive lawyers, leaving Logan with an unhealed wound and a deep-seated hatred for the reckless elite. To him, people like Avery, rich, flashy, and dismissive of rules, embodied everything he despised. He joined the police force not just to protect others, but to ensure no one else endured the pain his family had suffered. Tonight, spotting the Ducati tearing across the bridge at insane speeds, he knew he was dealing with one of those types. Avery stayed seated on the bike, hands on her hips, her long, slender legs in tight leather, resting lightly on the ground. She removed her helmet with a slow, almost deliberate motion, revealing a stunning face with sparkling brown eyes and a mischievous smile. Her long, curly brown hair spilled over her shoulders, wild but vibrant. She tossed her head back, locking eyes with Logan and speaking in a teasing tone. "Hey there, handsome. Got too much time on your hands to chase innocent people?" Her voice was light but carried a clear challenge, as if inviting him into a game she knew well. Logan stepped closer, his boots clicking sharply on the wet pavement. He stopped a few feet away, arms crossed over his chest, his gaze fixed on her face. "Papers," he said, his voice icy, unmoved by her smile. "You just broke the law, speeding and endangering public roads. Don't mess with me." His words were short and cutting, slicing through the tension between them. Avery raised an eyebrow, her smile widening. She tilted her head, feigning surprise. "Oh, come on, that's serious?" "I was just having a little fun. Don't you ever relax?" She tapped her fingers lightly on the Ducati's handlebars, her eyes scanning Logan as if sizing him up. "You look pretty fit. Bet you're not bad at driving. Want to race me? I bet you wouldn't dare." Her tone was provocative, her eyes gleaming as she awaited his reaction. Logan clenched his fists, suppressing the irritation rising inside him. He took a deep breath, keeping his voice steady, but his contempt seeped through every word. "I don't play childish games with spoiled heiresses like you. Get off the bike, hand over your papers, or I'll drag you off." He took another step forward, his right hand resting lightly on the holster at his belt. Not as a threat, but to signal he wasn't joking. Avery laughed loudly, her voice echoing through the bridge's quiet expanse. She rested her hands on her hips, shaking her head in disbelief. "Spoiled heiress? You're funny. I'm Avery Carter, not some doll waiting for a rescue." She hopped off the bike with a swift motion, standing tall in front of Logan, nearly matching his height thanks to her heeled boots. "Who do you think I am? Some fragile little princess needing a hero? I bet you've never met anyone like me." Logan smirked, a rare hint of sarcasm in his expression. "I've met plenty of your type. Rich, troublemaking, and thinking money can buy anything. But the law's the law, and you're not getting out of this." He held out his hand again, gesturing for her papers. "Hand them over, or I'll seize your bike right now." Avery crossed her arms, tilting her head with a playful glint in her eyes. "Seize my bike? Bold move. Do you know how much this thing costs? Probably more than a few months of your salary." She stepped closer, so near that Logan could catch the faint scent of her perfume, mint mixed with a touch of sweetness. "Come on, Mr. Serious. Let me off this once. I promise I'll behave a little." She winked, deliberately softening her voice. But Logan remained unshaken. He stared straight into her eyes, his gaze hard as steel. "Who do you think I am? Some rookie cop you can toy with? I don't care who you are or what your bike's worth. Break the law, you pay the price. Papers now, or I'll cuff you." His voice dropped, carrying an unmasked threat. Avery froze for a second, clearly unaccustomed to such blunt rejection. But she quickly regained her confidence, shrugging as she dug into her pocket for her papers. "Fine, fine. You win this round. But don't think I'm scared of you." She tossed the stack of documents into Logan's hands with a slightly exaggerated flick, causing a few sheets to flutter to the ground. "Oops, clumsy me," she said, feigning innocence, though her eyes sparkled with amusement. Logan bent down to pick up the papers, his lips pressed tight to hold back his frustration. He glanced at her driver's license. Avery Carter, address in an upscale Pacific Heights neighborhood. He muttered under his breath. "Carter Enterprises, just as I figured." He looked up, fixing her with a cold stare. "You're done. $500 for speeding, plus $200 for non-compliance. Next time you pull this, I won't go easy." Avery smirked, crossing her arms over her chest. $700? Pocket change. But you're so dull, Mr. Copper. Your life must be boring, all about rules and laws. She turned, striding back to her Ducati, tossing a final remark over her shoulder. See you around. I bet you'll miss me. Logan stood still, watching her vanish into the fog, his hand gripping the papers tightly. He muttered, Miss you? I'd rather never see you again. But deep down, he knew this wasn't the end. Avery Carter pushed open the door to her luxurious Pacific Heights penthouse, her heeled boots clicking on the polished wooden floor. The city lights of San Francisco twinkled through the large windows, but she paid them no mind. Her hand still clutched the $700 fine that stiff cop had given her, her brown eyes flashing with a mix of annoyance and intrigue. She tossed her helmet onto the white leather sofa, watching it roll once before stopping, then pulled her phone from her leather jacket pocket, dialing Jen without glancing at the screen. The phone rang twice before her best friend's lively voice burst through. Hey, how'd the race go, Speed Princess? Don't tell me you got caught. Avery smirked, her familiar mischievous grin returning. She flopped onto the sofa, leaning back with one arm draped over the armrest. Yeah, I got nabbed. Ran into this insanely stubborn cop, the kind you'd think only exists in boring movies. He made me stop, fined me $700, and even threatened to cuff me. She recounted the tale, her tone a mix of irritation and amusement, as if the Golden Gate incident was just a minor game that had ended. Jen laughed loudly on the other end, her giggles overpowering the bar's background music. Oh my God, Soph, I can picture it. You get in trouble and still act cool as ever? That guy must have been pissed he couldn't shut you up. Avery joined in the laughter, shaking her head. Yeah, he's serious to a fault. But, she paused for a second, her eyes lighting up with a sudden idea. I bet I can make him break a rule once. A guy like that losing to me? That'd be fun. Jen stopped laughing, her voice instantly brimming with excitement. A bet? All right, I'm in. If you win, if you get that stubborn cop to break a rule, I'll pay for the Hawaii trip, plane tickets, 5-star hotel, the works. But if you lose, you're washing my Mustang for a year. By hand, no hiring help. She emphasized each word, as if already picturing Avery with a bucket and sponge. Avery sat up straight, gripping the phone tightly, her smile turning into a determined, challenging smirk. Deal, she said firmly. He doesn't know who he's dealing with yet, Jen. I'll make him remember the name Avery Carter forever. She hung up, tossing the phone onto the couch, her eyes gleaming as if she'd just found a new game to conquer. Part 2, a crazy bet and an unavoidable bed sharing. Tuesday morning at the Tenderloin police station in San Francisco buzzed with the sound of ringing phones, clacking keyboards, and voices echoing from interrogation rooms. Logan Hayes sat behind his desk, his crisp dark blue uniform neatly pressed, his sharp eyes scanning a stack of reports about last night's car theft. He took a sip of black coffee from an old paper cup, trying to focus after a long shift. But his peace was quickly shattered when the station's glass door swung open and a familiar figure strode in with unmistakable confidence. Avery Carter appeared in a striking red form-fitting dress, her high heels clicking rhythmically on the tiled floor, her long, curly hair swaying with every step. She held the fine citation in her hand, her brown eyes twinkling with mischief as she surveyed the station like it was her personal stage. She'd hatched a plan last night. To win her bet with Jen, she had to get close to that stubborn cop, Logan, and make him break a rule. Step 1, show up naturally, oh so accidentally. She marched straight to the front desk where Logan sat, flashing a radiant smile. Hey, Mr. Serious, she said, her voice sweet but dripping with teasing. I'm here to pay my fine. Miss me? Logan looked up, his eyes narrowing instantly as he recognized her. He set his coffee cup down on the desk, his tone icy. Miss Carter. I don't think I could forget the person who broke the law right on the Golden Gate Bridge. He held out his hand, not bothering to stand. Hand over the citation. I'll process it quick, and you can leave. But Avery wasn't in a hurry. She stepped closer, leaning against his desk, holding a cup of water she'd just grabbed from the nearby dispenser. Oh, don't rush me, she said, pretending to fumble as the cup tilted. A stream of cold water splashed straight onto Logan's uniform, soaking the chest area. Logan jolted, leaping from his chair, his hands frantically brushing at the water, only spreading the wet spot further. "What the hell are you doing?" he growled, his voice dropping with anger. Avery covered her mouth, her eyes widening in mock surprise. "Oh, I'm so clumsy. Sorry about that." She grabbed tissues from a box on the desk, stepping closer to dab at his shirt with deliberately awkward motions. "Let me wipe it for you. It's fine. It'll dry fast." Her fingers accidentally brushed his chest, making Logan freeze, his face flushing with a mix of embarrassment and irritation. He grabbed her wrist, pulling her hand away from him, his gaze sharp and cold. "You did that on purpose, didn't you?" he asked, his tone suspicious, staring into her eyes as if searching for proof. Avery shrugged, her mischievous grin unwavering. "On purpose? How could I? You think I'm that bored? I just wanted to pay my fine." She held up the citation, waving it in front of him like a white flag. Though her eyes told a different story, she was enjoying this game. Logan snatched the citation from her hand, returning to his desk, trying to stay calm. He typed the information into the computer, but Avery's presence still made him uneasy. When he finished, he slid the stamped citation across the desk. "Done. Get out," he said, not even glancing at her. But Avery didn't budge. She crossed her arms, tilting her head. "You here all day? This place looks kind of fun. Maybe I'll drop by more often." Logan glared at her. "Come back again, and I'll arrest you for harassment." But that was just the beginning. 2 days later, while Logan stood in line at his favorite coffee shop, a small place called Blue Brew near the station, he heard a familiar voice behind him. "Oh, Mr. Serious drinks coffee too?" He turned, and sure enough, there was Avery, dressed in an oversized sweater and jeans, still exuding an effortless elegance. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his tone annoyed. She shrugged. "I got lost. Can you show me the way back to Pacific Heights?" Logan sighed, gripping the coffee cup he'd just received. "You've got GPS. Figure it out." But Avery didn't give up. She followed him outside, feigning innocence. "I'm not good with tech. Help me out, won't you? Cops are supposed to serve the public." Logan stopped, turning to her. "What's wrong with you?" "I'm not your tour guide." Avery grinned wide. "Then just think of it as doing a good deed. I promise I won't spill water on you again." That weekend she showed up again, this time at the park near the station where Logan usually jogged on Saturday mornings. He was taking a break on a bench, holding a water bottle, when Avery strolled by, accidentally dropping her handkerchief right in front of him. "Oh, Officer Hayes, what a coincidence," she chirped, bending down to pick it up with a slow, deliberate motion, making sure he noticed. Logan stood, his eyes wary. "Are you following me? If you've got something to say, spit it out." Avery straightened up, laughing loudly. "Following? You're too full of yourself. I just like park walks. Who knew I'd run into you?" Logan crossed his arms, staring her down. "I don't buy it. What do you want?" Avery tilted her head, her eyes sparkling. "Want? Nothing at all. Just, I like seeing you get mad. You're kind of cute when you're ticked off." She winked, turning to leave before he could respond. Leaving Logan standing there, irritated yet flustered, he muttered, "She's nuts." But deep down, he started wondering if he really hated her as much as he thought. Friday evening, Avery Carter lounged in her luxurious penthouse, the city lights of San Francisco twinkling through the large windows like a living painting. She sprawled on the sofa, legs draped over the armrest, a glass of red wine swaying lightly in her hand. After days of approaching Logan Hayes, the stubborn cop she'd clashed with on the Golden Gate Bridge, she still hadn't figured out how to make him break a rule like she'd bet Jen. Spilling water on him at the station? Funny, but not enough. Tailing him to the coffee shop and park? He just got angrier, not closer to cracking. She sipped her wine, muttering, "This guy's tough. But I'm not giving up." Her phone buzzed on the table, the screen lighting up with Jen flashing. Avery smirked, reaching over to hit speakerphone and setting her glass down. "Hey, Speed Princess!" Jen's voice rang out, brimming with excitement from the other end. "How's it going? Has that hard-headed cop broken any rules yet? I'm waiting for good news to book those Hawaii tickets." Avery laughed, shaking her head. "Not yet. He's like a rock, unmovable. I've tried everything, spilling water, playing lost, but he just gets mad. But I'll win. Just wait. Jen burst into laughter, her giggles drowning out the bar's background music. Oh, that sounds lame. Breaking rules in tiny ways like that isn't enough, Soph. I'm upping the stakes for you. She paused for a beat, heightening the drama, then continued with a taunting tone. I bet you can't make that cop sleep in the same bed as you. Avery froze, her hand holding the wineglass midair. She went quiet for 2 seconds, then erupted into loud laughter that filled the room. Sleep in the same bed? You're insane, Jen. Him agreeing to that would be like the sun rising in the west. Jen didn't back down, her voice growing even more enthusiastic. Exactly, that's what makes it fun. If you pull it off, I'll not only cover the Hawaii trip, but throw in an extra week in Maui, all expenses paid. But if you lose, you're not just washing my car for a year, you'll be my personal driver for a month. You in? Avery sat up straight, her eyes lighting up as if she'd just found a challenge worth taking. She set the wineglass on the table, smirking with a mischievous grin. All right, watch me. He won't know what hit him. From that night, Avery started plotting. She couldn't rely on luck. She needed an unavoidable situation to trap Logan. Through a few casual calls to a contact at the station, she learned his patrol schedule. Next Saturday, he'd be on night duty in the southern outskirts near Pillar Point Forest. Perfect, she muttered, opening her laptop to check the weather forecast. A big storm was predicted to hit that area right on Saturday. Avery laughed, tapping the table. Storm, motel, 1 room left. He's not getting away. She got to work. Her red Ducati would conveniently break down mid-route, a little trick with the fuel line she'd picked up from a racing buddy. She'd show up at the right time, in the right place, and the storm would do the rest. Avery closed her eyes, picturing Logan's grumpy face stuck with her in a cramped space. Just wait, Mr. Serious, she said, her voice brimming with confidence. I'll make you lose without even knowing why. Saturday came faster than Avery expected. San Francisco's sky darkened by afternoon, thick black clouds drifting south, bringing rumbling thunder and fierce gusts. Logan Hayes drove his patrol car along the narrow road near Pillar Point, his sharp eyes scanning through the windshield as rain began pattering down. He hated storm shifts, slippery roads, poor visibility, and usually nothing but drunk troublemakers. But he did it, because it was the job. Tonight he had no idea the biggest trouble was waiting ahead. A few miles away, Avery stood by her red Ducati, pretending to fiddle with it on the roadside. She'd planned it perfectly, loosening a fuel line so the bike would die right as Logan passed by. Rain started pouring, soaking her leather jacket, but she didn't care. When the patrol car's headlights flashed in the distance, she smirked, waving her arms in mock panic. Logan slowed down, pulling over, and stepped out with a black umbrella. When he realized it was Avery, his face darkened instantly. You? He growled, his voice cutting through the rain. What are you doing here? Avery raised her hands, acting flawlessly. My bike broke down. I was just out for a ride and got stuck here. Logan glared at her, clearly skeptical, but the storm was intensifying, the wind ripping his umbrella apart. He sighed, pointing to his car. Get in. I'll take you to a shelter. Avery smiled inwardly, following him without hesitation. They drove to a rundown roadside motel, a rickety wooden building with a neon vacancy sign flickering faintly. Inside, the elderly owner, her silver hair tied back, shook her head when Logan asked, Only 1 room left, son. 1 bed. No one's going out in this storm. Logan stiffened, turning to Avery, who stood behind him with a subtle smile. I'll sleep on the floor, he growled, his tone leaving no room for argument. The room was tiny, smelling of old wood and dampness. A single bed sat in the middle, covered with a worn sheet, flanked by a small wooden table and a tattered armchair. Logan dropped his backpack on the floor, peeling off his wet jacket and spreading it over the chair to dry. Avery stepped in, shedding her leather jacket, revealing a thin sweater clinging to her from the rain. She glanced at the filthy floor, covered in dust and suspicious stains that might have been from mice, then turned to Logan with a teasing tone. The floor's nasty. Aren't you scared of rats? Sleep on the bed with me? I don't bite. Logan shot her a look, plopping down on the floor stubbornly. I'd rather sleep with rats than you. Avery laughed loudly, pulling out her phone and blasting a lively dance track, the volume drowning out the thunder outside. She danced on the bed barefoot, stomping on the sheet, singing and sneaking glances at Logan. "Relax a little, Mr. Serious. It's going to be a long night." Logan shot up, yelling, "Can you shut up? I need to sleep." Avery stopped dancing, but her grin didn't fade. "Fine, I'm sleeping. You can stay on the floor and dream about rules." She flopped onto the bed, pretending to pass out. But minutes later, she rolled over, arms and legs flailing, accidentally taking up nearly the whole space. Logan, lying on the floor with a thin blanket, heard the noise, looked up, and saw her practically shoving him out. He sighed, reluctantly climbing onto the bed's edge, stuffing a pillow between them like a wall. "Don't cross over," he warned, his voice grumpy. Avery cracked an eye open, giggling. "I'm a wild sleeper. No promises." In the middle of the night, as the rain pattered on, Logan jolted awake to Avery's sleep-talking. "Dad, don't make me." Her voice was soft, trembling, full of pressure. He turned, studying her face in the dim window light. No longer mischievous, just weary. For the first time, Logan realized she wasn't just the carefree heiress he'd assumed. He lay still, his gaze softening, and in that moment, a quiet seed of empathy took root. Part 3. When feelings begin to shift. San Francisco was steeped in the relentless rain of March, the gray sky hanging like a curtain blocking out the light. Inside the main office of Carter Enterprises, Avery Carter sat across from her father, Henry Carter, in a heavy atmosphere. The spacious room with its glass walls overlooking San Francisco Bay now felt more stifling than ever, not because of the rain, but because of the thick stack of documents on the table. It was the contract for the purchase of land in Oakland that Avery had signed 6 months ago under her father's direction. Now that land was suspected of being tied to money laundering, sparking a major lawsuit that threatened the conglomerate's reputation. Henry, with his silver hair and piercing eyes, tapped his fingers on the table, his voice low but laden with pressure. "Avery, you have to handle this. This is your responsibility to the family. Don't let me down again." Avery clenched her hands under the table, her nails digging into her palms until they stung. She hadn't directly managed the land. Her father's team had handled all the details. But as the heir, her name was on the contract, and now all the trouble fell on her shoulders. She knew she was being used as a pawn to keep Henry's hands clean, but she had no proof, only a growing sense of frustration. "I'm not a lawyer or a financial expert," she replied, her voice firm, her brown eyes flashing with defiance. "You got the company into this mess. Why do you keep forcing me to carry it?" Henry stood, his tall frame casting a shadow over her like a towering specter. "Because you're a Carter," he said, his voice icy. "Don't make me teach you that again." At the same time at the Tenderloin police station, Logan Hayes sat behind his desk, his hands flipping through a new case file his commander had just handed him. He frowned as he read the words. "Investigate Carter Enterprises, suspected money laundering through the Oakland Land Project." This wasn't his usual traffic patrol assignment. A few weeks earlier, thanks to his success in busting a car theft ring tied to illegal finances, Logan had been assigned to the San Francisco Police Department's Financial Crimes Task Force. He wasn't the lead detective, but with his patrol experience and persistence, he'd been tapped to assist with this investigation. When the name Avery Carter jumped out at him on the first page, he smirked with a hint of sarcasm. "I knew these rich types were never clean," he muttered, recalling their run-ins, from her racing on the Golden Gate Bridge to that forced bed-sharing in the storm. To him, Avery embodied the irresponsibility he'd always despised. He stood, pulling on his uniform jacket, determined to dig into this case to the end. Their meeting took place the following afternoon at Carter Enterprises headquarters. Logan strode into the conference room with a rigid posture, his task force badge peeking out from under his jacket. Avery sat across from him, still in her striking red dress, but this time without her usual mischievous smile. She crossed her arms, her gaze wary as Logan set the file down on the table, his voice cold. "Miss Carter, the Oakland land under your name shows irregular transactions, millions of dollars funneled through offshore accounts. What do you know about this?" Avery furrowed her brow, her tone calm but tinged with irritation. "I signed the contract because my father told me to, but I didn't handle the details." You think I sit there checking every transaction? Logan tapped his pen on the table, his sharp eyes locking onto hers without flinching. Don't play innocent. Someone like you, racing at night, causing trouble everywhere. I wouldn't be surprised if you're mixed up in this. Got anything to say? His words stabbed straight at Avery's pride. She shot up, slamming her hands on the table, her voice rising in anger. You think I'm a criminal? I'm not my father's puppet. What proof do you have to accuse me like that? Logan didn't budge, but his eyes hardened, reflecting the deep-rooted suspicion he'd carried for years. Proof? I'm working on it, he replied, his voice lowering. With someone like you, I don't need much to suspect. You grew up in money thinking the law's a game, right? Avery slammed her hand on the table again, the sound echoing loud enough to startle staff outside peering through the glass. What do you know about me to judge? She shouted, her eyes blazing with anger and hurt. I'm not who you think I am. I don't want to be part of this dirty mess, but I don't have a choice. The air in the meeting room was taut, like a string about to snap. Logan stood, stepping closer, the distance between them shrinking to just a few feet. He looked straight into her eyes, his voice low but cutting. No choice. That's what every crook says. You expect me to believe you're innocent when everything points to you? Avery let out a bitter laugh, devoid of her usual mischief, leaving only resentment. Believe what you want, she said, her voice softening to nearly a whisper. I don't need you to, but don't think I'm a puppet for others to pull strings. She turned, shoving the door open and storming out, her shoulders stiff as if hiding a tremble. Logan stood still, his hand gripping the pen so hard it creaked. Her words, I'm not a puppet, echoed in his mind, planting a tiny seed of doubt. He glanced through the glass, watching her figure disappear down the hallway, and for the first time he wondered, had he misjudged her? He sat back down, flipping through the file again, but his mind wasn't fully focused on pinning blame anymore. Something in Avery's voice, the rare vulnerability, made him start to suspect she might actually be innocent, or at least not the mastermind he'd assumed. Wednesday afternoon in East Oakland, the sky remained gray after days of lingering rain, but the air felt less oppressive. Logan Hayes drove his patrol car through the poor neighborhood near the land Carter Enterprises had bought for a commercial center. The project had been halted due to the money laundering lawsuit, leaving dozens of families homeless without proper compensation. As part of the Financial Crimes Task Force, Logan was assigned to patrol the area and gather more resident intel, though he wasn't the lead investigator. He pulled over at a street corner, turned off the engine, and stepped out with a small notebook, his keen eyes surveying the scene. Rundown wooden houses, chipped rooftops, and muddy alleys stretched before him, a world far removed from the skyscrapers Avery Carter usually inhabited. From a distance, he heard the murmurs of a crowd gathered near the vacant lot. Logan edged closer, staying out of sight behind an old pickup truck. In the middle of the group, he spotted a familiar figure, Avery Carter. She wasn't in her flashy red dress or racing leather this time, just a simple gray hoodie and muddy sneakers. She held a thick stack of envelopes, handing them out to residents with a rare seriousness on her face. Logan frowned, his grip tightening on the notebook, hardly believing his eyes. This was the girl who raced on the Golden Gate Bridge, spilled water on his uniform, and forced him to sleep on a bed's edge in a storm. What was she doing here? Avery bent down, giving an envelope to an elderly woman with tangled silver hair. I'm sorry about this, she said, her voice soft but sincere, free of her usual arrogance. This isn't from the company. It's my money. I'll try to make it right. The old woman took her hand, tears streaming down her wrinkled face. Thank you, young lady. I didn't expect... Avery gave a faint smile, nodded and moved on, handing envelopes to others. A middle-aged man with calloused hands, then a mother cradling a baby. Logan stood still, his hand lowering the notebook, stunned into silence. This wasn't the Avery he knew, the mischievous heiress who only teased and stirred trouble. This was someone else, someone with a conscience, someone facing consequences she didn't directly cause. He walked back to his car, his steps slow, but the image stuck with him. Sitting in the patrol car, he muttered, "She actually cares?" His doubts about the money laundering case began to waver. If she were truly as rotten as he'd thought, why sneak around doing this? He glanced in the rearview mirror, seeing Avery walk away, her small figure amid the crowd, and for the first time, he felt he might have been wrong about her. He decided not to report this to the task force yet. He wanted to watch her more, to understand her better. A few days later, on a chilly Friday evening, Logan trudged into the station after a long night shift in the rain. His uniform was soaked, streaked with mud from a minor highway accident he'd handled. His eyes were shadowed with exhaustion, his hands rubbing his forehead as he sank into a chair, craving a moment's rest before writing reports. The glass door swung open, and Avery walked in, holding 2 steaming coffee cups from Blue Brew, the spot he frequented. She set one in front of him, her tone casual. "I was passing by, saw you looking pathetic, so I brought this. Drink it, it won't kill you." Logan looked up, too surprised to snap at her. The fluorescent light lit her face, still beautiful, but without the usual mischief, just a hint of tiredness. "What are you doing here?" he asked, touching the cup but not lifting it, as if expecting a trick. Avery shrugged, sitting across from him, cradling her own coffee. "I said I was passing by. Night shift, huh? You look like a zombie." Logan glared at her, but this time without his usual edge. He took a sip, the warmth spreading through his hands and throat, unexpectedly soothing. "You know how to care about people?" he asked, half joking, half probing, his eyes searching hers. Avery smirked, sipping her own cup. "Don't get any ideas. I just didn't want you collapsing here. Who'd investigate my case then?" She stood, turning to leave, but paused at the door, glancing back. "No need to say thanks. I don't do mushy." Logan watched her disappear behind the glass, still holding the coffee. For the first time, he smiled. A small one, unseen by anyone. "She's weird," he muttered, taking another sip. The coffee's bitterness mixed with a touch of sweetness she'd added, like the feeling he was starting to have about her. No longer just annoyance, but a bit of curiosity, a bit of warmth. One Saturday evening, the rain had stopped, but San Francisco's streets still glistened wet under the streetlights. Logan drove his patrol car through Pacific Heights after his shift, his mind lingering on the Carter Enterprises case and Avery's actions in East Oakland. Suddenly, he spotted her on the roadside, her red Ducati parked nearby, but without her usual playfulness. She waved, her voice irritated. "Mr. Serious, can you give me a lift? My bike's really dead this time." Logan sighed, pulling over, eyeing the Ducati skeptically. "Get in," he said, his tone unenthusiastic but not refusing. "No funny business." Avery hopped into the back seat, resting her hands lightly on his shoulders for balance as the car rolled forward. The ride to Pacific Heights wasn't long, but an odd silence hung between them. Avery didn't tease, didn't play music or say anything silly like usual. She stared out the window, her gaze distant, her hands gripping the edge of her jacket as if lost in heavy thoughts. Logan glanced at her in the rearview mirror, sensing something off. "What's wrong?" he asked, his voice softer than usual, lacking its typical sharpness. Avery shrugged, but her voice was quieter than normal. "Nothing. Just tired." Logan didn't buy it. He pulled over at a quiet street corner, turned off the engine, and faced her. "Tell me the truth. You're not yourself." Avery sighed, finally showing real weariness. "My dad's pushing me to sign more papers for the case again. I don't want to, but he won't listen. I don't know what to do anymore." She looked down, her curly hair hiding her face. Logan stayed silent, then spoke unexpectedly, his voice low and slow. "I know what it's like to feel forced." Avery looked up, surprised. "You? What would you know?" Logan gazed out the windshield, his eyes clouding as if reliving an old memory. "My brother Tommy died when I was 18. A rich guy driving recklessly ran him over, then got off with money and lawyers. I became a cop so no one else would go through what my family did." He paused, his hands tightening on the steering wheel, his voice hoarse. "I hated people like you because I thought you were the same, careless, dismissive of everything." Avery stayed quiet, for once not arguing or teasing. She looked at him, feeling the pain in every word he spoke, a pain she'd never imagined he carried. "My dad never gave me a choice," she said softly, her voice trembling. "I act out because I want to live for myself, not him." Logan turned to her, his gaze softening, free of judgment. "Then you're not who I thought," he said gently. Avery gave a sad smile. "And you're not as rigid as I thought." They sat there in silence, the streetlights streaming through the car windows, casting faint, shimmering streaks. For the first time, they understood each other without needing more words, an invisible thread beginning to tie together two souls once at odds. Part 4. The Truth Revealed. Late Friday night in San Francisco, the sky was pitch black, devoid of stars, with only the faint glow of streetlights illuminating the wet streets after the afternoon rain. The Carter Enterprises headquarters, a dazzling glass building in the heart of the city, now stood silent in the darkness, with only a few lit windows on the 20th floor, where Avery Carter was still working. She sat alone in her office, a stack of documents about the Oakland land under investigation by Logan's task force spread before her. Numbers, transactions, and offshore company names danced across her laptop screen, but she couldn't fully grasp their meaning. Her father, Henry Carter, had pressured her to sign another contract to fix the lawsuit, but her gut told her something was wrong. She sighed, rubbing her temples, her tired eyes glancing at the clock. 11:45 p.m. "Enough," she muttered, shutting off the computer, standing up to grab her leather jacket, and deciding to head home. As Avery stepped out of the elevator on the ground floor, the building's lobby was deserted, the sound of her high heels echoing on the marble floor. She pushed open the glass door, and a blast of frigid air hit her, making her shiver. The parking lot was a few hundred meters away, so she quickened her pace through a narrow alley leading to her blazing red Ducati. But as she turned into the alley, she froze. A tall, dark figure blocked her path, his face hidden under a hood, a gleaming metal bar in his hand. "Avery Carter?" His voice was deep and raspy, laced with cold menace. Avery took a step back, her heart pounding. "Who are you? I don't know you," she said, trying to keep her voice steady, her hand slipping into her pocket for her phone. The man didn't answer, only stepping closer, the metal glinting under the streetlight. "You know too much," he snarled. "Shut up or die." Before Avery could react, another shadowy figure emerged from behind her, swift as lightning, pinning her arms and clamping a rough cloth over her mouth. She thrashed, kicking hard at the legs of the man behind her, but the strength of the two attackers overwhelmed her. The cloth slipped, and she screamed, "Let go! Who sent you?" The man with the metal bar raised it high, ready to strike, his eyes icy and unhesitating. A few blocks away, Logan Hayes sat in his patrol car, eyes glued to the phone screen displaying a GPS tracker. As a member of the Financial Crimes Task Force, he'd been tracking transactions tied to the Oakland land all week, and a tipster had warned that the criminal organization behind it, a drug cartel using real estate to launder money, was targeting Avery to silence her. He wasn't sure if she was involved or just a victim, but after what he'd seen in East Oakland and that coffee moment at the station, he couldn't leave her alone. He'd been parked near Carter Enterprises since evening, waiting, and when he saw her office lights go out, he knew she was about to leave. Avery's scream pierced the quiet night from the alley. Logan jolted, slamming the gas pedal and racing toward the sound, his patrol car's headlights slicing through the dark. He spotted her pinned between two men, the metal bar poised above her head. Without a second thought, he leaped from the car, drew his gun from its holster, and shouted, "Drop the weapon! Police!" The two men spun around, but instead of complying, the one with the bar charged at him, swinging hard. Logan dodged to the side, smashing the butt of his gun into the man's hand, sending the bar clattering to the ground. The second man released Avery, pulling a knife and lunging. But Logan was faster. He pivoted, kicking the man's knee hard, dropping him to the pavement. Avery, freed, stumbled back against the wall, gasping, her wide eyes watching Logan fight. The knife wielder got up, slashing at Logan's left arm, the blade tearing through his sleeve and slicing a long gash. Blood flowed, staining his sleeve red. But Logan didn't stop. He roared, driving his right fist into the man's face, knocking him flat. The other attacker rushed forward, but Logan grabbed his wrist, twisted it back, and pinned him to the ground. In seconds, both assailants lay motionless, panting at his feet. Logan turned to Avery, clutching his wounded left arm, blood dripping to the ground. "You okay?" he asked, his voice hoarse with exhaustion. Avery nodded, but her eyes were wild with panic, her hands trembling as she stepped toward him. You're hurt, she said, her voice breaking. Logan managed a faint smirk, trying to grin. Just a scratch. Call 911. He sank to the ground, leaning against the wall, while Avery fumbled for her phone, her shaking hands struggling to dial. The emergency room at San Francisco General Hospital glowed with stark white light, the air tinged with the smell of antiseptic. Logan lay on a hospital bed, his left arm carefully bandaged after 12 stitches for the deep knife wound. He wore a thin patient gown, his face pale from blood loss, but his eyes remained bright despite the fatigue. The door swung open, and Avery stepped in, her eyes red and puffy, holding a cup of hot water she'd grabbed from a machine in the hall. She'd stayed at the hospital since the police and ambulance arrived at the scene, refusing to go home despite Logan's colleagues urging her to rest. She sat on the chair beside his bed, setting the cup on the table, her gaze fixed on Logan. "How are you?" she asked, her voice soft, a far cry from her usual playfulness. Logan looked at her, managing a weak smile. "I'll live. You don't need to stay here." But Avery shook her head, her hand unconsciously gripping the bed's edge. "I have to. You got hurt because of me." Her voice faltered, and before Logan could reply, she bowed her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I didn't want you to get hurt because of me. If you hadn't come, She choked, her grip tightening, unable to finish. Logan watched her, his heart tightening. He'd never seen Avery like this. Fragile, vulnerable, stripped of the mischievous shell that usually hid everything. He reached out with his uninjured right hand, touching hers lightly, his voice low but warm. "You're the biggest trouble in my life, but I couldn't leave you." Avery looked up, her teary eyes meeting his, and in that moment, the space between them seemed to freeze. She grasped his hand, her cold, trembling fingers intertwining with his warmth seeping into her. "I was so scared," she whispered, her voice shaky. "I don't know who's behind this, but I don't want to lose you. Not after everything." Logan smiled, though the pain in his arm made him wince. "I don't want to lose you either," he said, his voice raspy but firm. "I thought you were just a spoiled troublemaker, but I was wrong. You're stronger than I realized." Avery laughed through her tears, showing a hint of shyness for the first time. "You're not so bad yourself, Mr. Sirius. I've liked you for a while now." Logan blinked, then let out a small chuckle, though each laugh stung his arm. "Liked me? You're good at hiding it." He squeezed her hand gently, his gaze softer than ever. "I like you too, even if I didn't want to admit it. You drive me crazy, but I don't regret it." Avery leaned down, her cheeks flushing, but she didn't let go of his hand. They sat in silence, hands clasped tightly, and though no more words were spoken, they both knew their feelings had crossed the line from opposition to something deeper. The door opened, and a nurse stepped in to check on him, startling them into releasing each other's hands. Avery stood, wiping her tears quickly, coughing to mask her embarrassment. I'll get more water," she said, hurrying out. Logan watched her go, smiling, knowing that from now on they were no longer just trouble to each other. Part 5. A perfect ending. 3 weeks after the attack in the dark alley, San Francisco returned to its everyday beauty, free of the persistent rain and stifling tension. The money laundering case tied to the Oakland land was finally solved, thanks to the tireless efforts of the Financial Crimes Task Force, of which Logan Hayes was a part. The illegal transactions were traced back to a major drug cartel, and Henry Carter, Avery's father, was arrested as the mastermind, despite his attempts to shift the blame onto her. Avery, with Logan's support and the evidence she had quietly gathered from the office, was fully exonerated. She refused to take over Carter Enterprises, handing it over to the board of directors, determined to live her own life, free, no longer under the oppressive shadow of her family. On a Saturday afternoon, the sunset bathed the San Francisco sky in a radiant gold, the last rays of daylight glimmering over the bay and reflecting onto Avery's Pacific Heights penthouse. She stood on the balcony, dressed in a loose white sweater and jeans, her long curly hair swaying in the gentle breeze. After everything, the lawsuit, the attack, And those chaotic days, she felt lighter than ever before. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jen. "Congrats on escaping that old man. Hawaii's still waiting. You won the bet." Avery laughed loudly, typing back, "I won bigger than you think." She set the phone down, gazing into the distance, her thoughts suddenly turning to Logan, the man who had changed everything in her life. The doorbell rang, pulling her from her reverie. Avery frowned, not expecting anyone at this hour. She walked to the door, unlatched it, and there stood Logan Hayes. He wasn't in his police uniform, instead wearing a simple brown leather jacket and dark jeans, his left arm still lightly bandaged but nearly healed. His face remained angular, his eyes sharp, but this time there was a rare smile. Gentle, warm, a far cry from the sternness she once knew. Avery crossed her arms, tilting her head with a teasing tone. "Mr. Serious, lost your way? Or did the task force give you another mission?" Logan stepped closer, hands in his jacket pockets, his eyes glinting with an unusual confidence. "No mission this time," he said, his voice low but clear. "I came here for you." Avery raised an eyebrow, her familiar mischievous grin returning. "Oh, that sounds romantic. Are you here to arrest me for something else? I swear I haven't raced this week." Logan let out a small laugh, shaking his head. "No arrests. This time, I'm here to make a bet." "A bet?" Avery blinked, then burst into loud laughter that echoed through the hallway. "You've picked up my game, huh? All right, tell me, what's the bet?" Logan took another step forward, the distance between them shrinking to just a few inches. He looked straight into her eyes, the smile fading from his lips, replaced by a serious yet tender gaze. "I bet you wouldn't dare love me for the rest of your life," he said, his voice low but firm, like a final challenge. "Want to try?" Avery froze, her eyes widening in surprise. She stared at him, her mouth opening as if to say something, but then she erupted into a big, joyful laugh she couldn't hold back. "Oh my God, Logan Hayes, you can actually say cheesy lines like that?" she said through her laughter, covering her mouth but her eyes still shining brightly. Logan shrugged, trying to keep his cool, though his cheeks flushed slightly with embarrassment. "I learned from you. So do you dare?" He took one more step, so close she could smell the faint woody scent of his cologne. Warm, just like him. Avery stopped laughing, though the smile lingered on her lips. She tilted her head, looking at him with eyes both playful and gentle. "This bet? I'm winning for sure," she declared, her voice firm, then suddenly lunged forward, throwing her arms around him in a tight hug. Logan flinched but immediately wrapped his arms around her, his right hand gripping her waist, his left, still bandaged, resting lightly on her back. She lifted her face, their noses brushing, their breaths mingling. "I really love you, Mr. Serious," she whispered, her voice soft but sincere. "Since that night in the hospital, I knew I couldn't get away from you." Logan smiled, this time a genuine one, free of any restraint. "I love you too, troublemaker," he replied, his voice husky with emotion. "I thought I hated you, but turns out I can't live without you." He leaned down, his lips meeting hers in a gentle yet deep kiss, as if all the tension, misunderstandings, and opposition between them melted away in that moment. Avery kissed him back, her hands clutching his jacket, her heart filled with a peace she'd never known. They stood there, locked in an embrace in the penthouse hallway, the sunset streaming in from the balcony, bathing them in a layer of brilliant golden light. San Francisco sprawled beneath them, the Golden Gate Bridge, the sparkling bay, and the streets that had witnessed their journey from strangers to lovers. Avery rested her head on Logan's shoulder, whispering, "You lost the bet, you know. I'm really going to love you forever." Logan chuckled softly, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "I'm happy to lose, but don't think I'll let you win that easily." She looked up, winking. "Oh, so there's more betting to come? Bring it on, I'm ready." Logan shook his head, pulling her closer, and they kissed again under the sunset, Avery's laughter mingling with his quiet happiness. The journey from days of bickering, wild bets, and that dangerous night in the alley now closed with a perfect ending. A love neither had expected, but the most beautiful thing they'd ever found. Thank you for following this heartfelt story of Soul Stories channel. Share your thoughts about the story in the comments below. If you believe that true love can withstand all trials and sometimes begins in the simplest of ways, don't forget to hit the like button and share this story with your friends. To never miss out on touching and meaningful stories, subscribe to our channel and help us spread messages of love and warmth to everyone. Let's cherish the beautiful moments of life and love together.